I'm just gonna wet it and just put some nice colors in there.
Seal it first, though.
Nope, nothing. This is just paper. This is watercolor board. So this is just watercolor board.
Graphics.
It's gonna smear,
Oh.
and yeah, it's gonna smear. Definitely gonna smear. I could roll the rubber eraser over it, but again, it's acrylic gonna be in the end, and hopefully I can cover it all up. It depends, how far you want to take it. Just have fun and see. It's a big wash. It's almost like I'm just planning on like a lot of oil painters and acrylic painters, they color their canvas first, like with a bright red. So it's almost like that. Like I'm almost just going in, getting my light colors in there that are gonna be underneath.
So you're just choosing the colors that you like.
Yeah, I mean the buildings are probably, grayish, reddish, but more not quite as bright. So I'm just gonna go in there and get like a light color. And those people who do that and see, like I'm so used to going around my lights, like the whites, that I don't think about it. It's like, oh, wait a second, I can just go back with white paint and just put it on there. So then I have to think about that sometimes. It's like, oh, wait a second, I'm doing acrylic. But I'm trying to do more mixed media kind of thing where I'm using all of them. I want to use them all together. Like I have these 3 palettes and I want to use them all. And then I want to even add oil, aqua oils, the aqua oils. I just want to put them in there too. It also depends on what medium I'm working on or what surface I'm working on. Like, so again, just going here and just getting a light color over this. And this, I like working this way more than working super, super fine, detailed like a photograph. I'm not a hyper realist. I like to be more of an impressionist. I like to do impressionistic paintings, not so they look like a photograph. Which, I don't mind that at all by people that do that. And it's amazing they can do that because I would go nuts by the time I get to the first hour and I'm doing one little thing and I can't get anything. But that's every person's different. So I'm teaching you how I do it. And there's a lot of different ways of doing these things. And even when it comes to acrylic. So now what I'm doing back here is I'm showing you a little bit of the buildings back there. And that's going to be done. And I'm going to keep the white of the paper instead of maybe putting white paint there. It's the background. Why would I want to put white thick in the background? And so I do like the fact that it's really light back there. So I'm going to keep the white of the paper. And that's something that oil painters and acrylic painters don't do. They cover their whole paper and their whole canvas, where here I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave that white paper. And then when I go to frame it or something, I would have to wax this. And I brought wax to show you how to wax your painting so you don't have to use glass. And even though I won't have to wax this anyways, because this is acrylic and it will nothing will happen to this afterwards because it's acrylic. Oh, I actually did use some watercolor here. But when I mix my watercolor with my acrylic, the acrylic kind of oversees the watercolor because I'm using acrylic medium that's going to go into my watercolor. So it turns my watercolor into acrylics. It's kind of like supersedes the watercolor because you're putting a acrylic medium into a watercolor. Now, I'm not sure how much of that I put in there, so it may not be totally waterproof.
You're anyway sponsored by Holbein. It's the paints for nothing.
I know. That's a phone book regarding. Like a photograph that somebody's goofing around and it's like the best 20 years later.
Yeah, I got with Holbein many years ago. I used to work only for one show. I worked with My Mary Paints, and the guy totally screwed me in California. And I mean, I lost money on that deal. And I came back, and while I was there, Linda Kemp, who's a watercolorist, introduced me to the Holbein people. And after I used the paint, I was like, yeah, okay, I would love to work with you guys because I like the fact that it didn't dry out. And I thought for my students, man, that's an awesome thing that doesn't dry out. So again, I'm going here now, throwing some shadow in there, just trying to get a look of shadow. A little white in my paint. And I use white too. I'll use a little white to tone things down. It's so much fun when you can not worry about the medium you're using because it's a rule. All those rules that you get when you first take classes, like when I took, if they ever use white, man, I think Shapiro would knock our fingers off. But I find that, when I see other famous artists using those colors, and I'm thinking, well, why did they use those colors? But as a student, I can see there's certain reasons why you don't want to use like black or white. But after you get to a certain point, I like using all those things, and I try to use them all together, like all the mediums and stuff, and thick and thin, and yeah, yeah. And the mediums are so neat. There's so many different mediums that you can get out there. So I think I would block this in, even if I was doing like an oil painting, I would block it in like this anyways. Maybe with a little thicker paint, but I kind of do big washes and stuff. So I'm going all around, getting my main things that are underneath.
Just to kind of set the atmosphere with.
Yeah, to kind of set the color tones, like the colors. So I'm going with blue and orange, kind of. Blue and, even though it's more red and violet, maybe blue. It's kind of blue. If you look at it, it's kind of red and blue.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to use that. That's going to like a drab.
It is.
So I'm gonna.
It's really good.
I like to make it a little bit more vibrant than that. And when you're a certain kind of painter for so long and you've studied to working a certain way for so long, you're not going to get away from that. That's part of you now. Like it's your style because you worked so hard to get there. You're not going to all of a sudden that's going to disappear just because you're using a different medium. And actually, I don't think I want it to disappear. I wanted to use it and then advance that into something else and then try something else. Add to it, add to the medium and try mixing both together, or that's what I kind of do. I kind of mix everything together. So that's pretty much my lights, right? There ain't not much lights in there. I'm going to go more with the orangey blue kind of look. And so now I can go to my big mediums and darks. That's my second step. I always do in all my paintings that I teach. My second step is my large mediums and large darks. Not detail yet. I'm still building up a foundation for everything. I'm getting in there. Still pretty much using it like watercolor because I'm floating my pigment into a wash, getting hard edges. Because again, why? Because I hate blending. I do not like blending. So why should I sit there and blend when I can have the watercolor do it for me? Make a soft edge. And hard edges, all I have to do is keep the paper dry and you're fine. You're absolutely fine. You just go in there. This is a nice dark. The cool thing is that when I'm going with acrylics, none of this matters because I can go over everything yet. I can make everything as thick as that because that's really thick. I see the ending was on black paper, so that's very thick. Though look at all the white black paper I left. So you don't have to cover all your paper. That happens to be black paper, so I don't have to cover that up because I want it to be black. And when you're using black paper, you just leave it black. Here, if I need a black, I got to put it in. And one of my favorite colors is purple, so we got to get a little purple in there. And then you got to mix a little bit orange with it. You get a brown. And take a little bit of perspective in here, maybe a window or two. And again, this is just a foundation yet. There's no details. It's just big areas of light and dark. I'm still grasping on getting big areas done so that they look like the value I need. It's all about values. Everything's about values and how the values are looking. So this is a dark shadow. Gonna bring that in over here. I do want to make a cobblestone down here, but I'll do that afterwards. First, I gotta get the overall values. And the nice thing is that I don't have to worry about things here because it's all just fundamentals. But I find that sometimes I'll stop because I like it the way it is. It's like, well, why should I put thick on there when I like it already? And the great thing about this is when it dries, I can go back over and over and over again because it's not going to affect this wash. This wash right now, when it dries, will look like that no matter what I do. because it's not pulling it back out when it dries, because this is acrylic. So it'll stay that way. And if I want to put another layer, maybe a transparent layer over that, I can make it look like it's physically, 3D. And that's something you can't do in watercolor, because when you put the watercolor down, you put another wash over it, it picks it up again. And then, so that's kind of like starting with acrylic. If you're doing like a sky, you put the clouds and stuff in, or like the background, you put clouds on top of that, with white paint afterwards. And so you can get some really neat looking skies because it looks very three-dimensional. These colors are so vibrant sometimes here, so I'm gonna put a couple of little vibrant colors in there. Ooh, look at that. Isn't that good, nice?
If you can find your drawing.
Yeah, we can.
I can see how you're gonna do that.
That's where drawing comes in really good. So if you learn how to draw, and the stuff I don't see, I'm gonna make up, and so you just kind of make it up. So there's my big mediums pretty much. Now I gotta get this whole center here is a little bit darker. I gotta use a little bit smaller brush this time. And you notice I'm using watercolor brushes. I do have some acrylic brushes, but that's for later when I go in with thick. I don't need to use a acrylic brush right now because I'm not using it thick. I'm using it more like watercolor. So I might as well use a watercolor brush. And they're all the same anyways. I mean, the acrylic brushes are just a little bit stiffer. When you get this, like this one right here, is an acrylic brush, oil painting brush, it's stiffer. Still nylon, but it's stiffer brush. But when you're used to a brush, I like to use it for everything. Put this through here. I always tell my students who are watercolorists or who started out as oil painters and wanted to do watercolor, they're kind of advanced in a way, the fact that if you can then do watercolor, then you're going to be using a little bit more pigment, because most watercolorists don't start out with enough pigment. They're always really stingy with their watercolor, and then if you use an oil, you use it thick, right? And you're using it really thick. So I like taking oil painters and making them watercolors because they use enough paint. They tend to use plenty of paint for it, and a lot of times almost too much. I have to set them back a little bit. It's like, no, 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 not that quite that much. Having the ability to do all of them, I think, is a really advantage to be able to do all the different mediums. So I guess it depends on who you take as a teacher, what medium you start with, and you just build. And one thing I must say, the most important out of all the mediums is your drawing. You have to learn how to draw to know things about art in general, how to compose, perspective,
John,
all the drawing, anything drawing wise. And I let people in my class trace, that's fine. But sooner or later, you have to definitely work on your drawing. And even if it's in your mind and figuring out, even if it's wrong, but if you just keep on drawing, it not only shows just like dimensions and stuff, but also dimensions, lengths of things, what things look like, back and forth, what's in back, what's in front, how round it is. So when I started learning how to draw after 4 years of life drawing, I really couldn't draw from my imagination, which is really a problem when I got my first job as an illustrator in Chicago. And so I got really mad and I said, hey, I took 4 years of life drawing. Every day I took life drawing, but I couldn't draw from my imagination. So my job was to draw TV commercials as a storyboard. And I couldn't do it because I needed a thing in front of me. I needed that object in front of me to draw it. And then I realized it's like, wow. And I saw these guys doing this without seeing anything. And they're just drawing. I'm like, man, how did you do that? And then I was taught then to look and study the object and memorize it. So memorize the object so that you can paint it. If I see it once, I can tell how to turn it in whatever way I want to then. Because you're looking at it in like 3D and you're memorizing the 3D end of it. So you can turn things around or make them any way you want. And those are usually people who are in the field of like comic books because they're making everything up, right? They make up Superman, he's got a cape, and they're making up creatures, or so they were really good at doing that, really good at making up characters and everything. Let's say this is the first demonstration I've ever done of acrylic, totally acrylic, and on this board. I don't think I've ever done a demonstration of this type. I've painted with it before in my studio and stuff, but this is the first demonstration I've done of this.
How's it going?
That's good, good. It's like I've done so many demonstrations. I do a demonstration every Thursday night, of watercolor. So if you want a free lesson every Thursday night, I'm on YouTube. And if you get my newsletter, you can even know what we're painting. You can get it done, and you can paint along if you want.
It's amazing. I've seen them and I've always either been gone or gone to bed early or something like that.
You can even afterwards, you can get them later down the line. So people were asking me, "Oh, can I get it?" New people, "Oh, is it just tonight?" I go, "No, it's there forever." So there's about 300 on there right now. Pick one, And there's always an assignment. There's always something we're trying to learn on each one. So it's not like I'm just do them just to do them. In the beginning of the year, we started with one color, and so it started out like in January 1st, and whatever the first Thursday was, we start out, and we were building on that. And so this week was again, background being soft edged, and we did a magnolia blossom. We did that, and so it was always and you can see it online because I had to do it yesterday because I'd come here tonight, so I did it yesterday instead of tonight because usually it's Thursday night. And I thought I've done watercolor here before, I've done oil here before, I've done on black paper here before, so I wanted to give you something different this time. So what haven't I done yet? And basically, I haven't done this at all yet. So, but I think it'll be fine. Matter of fact, this is probably easier than watercolor because again, I can go back in and keep on going until I get it done, until I feel it's what I want it to be. And see how I'm just pulling in big areas. I'm getting darker and darker. I'm getting thicker and thicker. And then to make it really neat, that's when you put on the thick stuff afterwards. And this is kind of, I remember Richard Schmid was an artist and an oil painter in Chicago. And he kind of did his oils like that. He did them really washy first and build up to that. And so it's kind of like a Richard Schmid then. Sorry, I got to go over it. It's kind of hard to see it from the side. It's funny, I've done this a couple times. I used to do this way. I taught in my class in McHenry. I used to teach from the side like this all the time. And then when you go look at front, like everything was widened because I'm looking at it from this way and I get in front of it. I'm like, whoa, oh my God, what the hell did I do there? It's like, it's way off. But if you look at it from here, it looks really good. From that angle, it looks really, really good. But see, I can still see my drawing. Because I left it transparent yet, so I can go in there still. And it's still thin enough that I didn't use it totally opaque. Like that's opaque now though. So that was a little bit thicker paint. So I keep on getting thicker and thicker as I go along here. I use a lot of water when I don't want it to be. And even though it's opaque, that's what opaque gouache is. It's opaque color, so it covers really well. So those lines go disappear right away. But if you use a lot of water, then it doesn't because there's a lot of water. It's very transparent. So when people use watercolor that is very opaque, they go, "Oh, I can't use opaque watercolor." You can use opaque watercolor very transparently. Like lavender, and this is lavender color. That's watercolor, but it looks very opaque because it's got white in it.
Well, either that or add more water, right?
Add more water. That's what you do. You add more water to make it look more transparent.
And these are like a quick dry, is that it? Or did
No.
they dry quick?
It just dries quick because it's acrylic and it's pretty warm in here. Or is that just me? I am getting old. I'm having hot flashes. See, coming up with names today, I was like, boy, I'm getting old. I was trying to think of a name of one of my students who got her AWS letters when I was teaching her. Like she's the first student to ever get her letters, and I totally forgot her name. I was just trying to think. I was like, man, I'm getting old. I did her website. I just couldn't think of her name. And so I'm thinking, how do I find out? What do I ask Google? How do I find this person out? And I thought, well, she got her AWS signature membership, so I'm gonna go to AWS website. And then right as I went there, all of a sudden you think about it, and I go, oh, Andy, that's right, Andy. But then I go, what's her last name now? That doesn't go. So then I went through the AWS. I'm like, Andrea Vincent. So Andrea Vincent from Chicago.
At least you remember tonight
Yeah.
too.
So yeah, she was one of my students, really good watercolorist. She really worked hard, and she got an AWS, and I still don't have my letters. I mean, she got in 2 years in a row, or 2 or 3 years in a row. It's like, wow, that was really. At that time, I wasn't entering. I was felt like I didn't need to do those things. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I want to judge. I want to be the judge. I don't want to be the person that gets not into the show.
No, no, you guys are fine.
It's good to look at it from a distance and from where you guys are at, because after a while, it starts. Everything looks doesn't. I can't tell what's going on. So if you're ever painting, either film it or every once in a while step back and look at it from a distance. I mean, every artist should do that. You need to get back from things and look at it from a distance.
Sometimes I have to take a picture. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that helps.
because you see it's small and you see how it hangs together and what doesn't hang together.
More than just from her for a half hour.
Yeah.
You're getting lazy now. Yes, now. There we go.
Oh, I know what I need to do. About 10 years. Upside down, that's what we do.
Just like being able to build, the painting is not worrying about what's in the background as you come forward, because with watercolor, you always got to watch out that you don't get too dark, because here I don't have to worry about that. I can go right through things. I can go still around things, but I'm just building up on things. That's what's really cool about using it. Because it takes away all that fear that our watercolors have of having to make sure that everything is one shot, one shot, two shots. I don't have to worry about that at all now.
That's what. Because the watercolors that help because it was so thin,
And it shouldn't be a problem either with watercolor, because you can go back into watercolor and make things light again. You can rub things out, but you don't want to, because it's like it makes every time you hit your brush on there, it's going to make it less and less fresh. And that's what watercolor is. It's a fresh medium. See, I'm faking a bunch of stuff in there because I really don't know. There's a sculpture here. And I'm just gonna kind of fake this sculpture in there. See, it's gonna be right there. And now this part is gonna have to be all darker because it's farther forward, but I don't have to worry about that. I can just do that later. And now this is dry. Then I don't have to worry about this. If I miss a spot, it'll be the color that goes through there. So it's really kind of,
It's really coming out now. It's amazing.
but paintings always go through the stages of light to middle tone, big middle tones and darks, and then the detail. And not only until you get to your detail does it look like anything. I was always told by Shapiro that You know, your paintings go through the uglies first because it's ugly first because there's no darks, there's no details. And so you're building this structure so that the darks make it look really cool. Because darks create shapes, darks create what the thing is. It creates what actually you're seeing. What is it that is up there? Now, I'm not a hyper realist, so you're not going to ever see exactly what it is because I don't care what that sculpture is in there. It looks like a face, maybe, but I'm just going to go like this, and that's going to be enough for me. You know, that's my style. Is that you're going to kind of see what it is, but it's your imagination will take over. I usually like to work an area and finish it. And so that's the company is seeing me like work on one spot, even though 'cause I'm at the detail stage. I'm at detail stage right now. The dark details, even though they're not super detailed, but they are detailed. So I like to get the area done before I move on to other parts because I hate jumping around. I like to get it done and then it's done. And when I'm painting in my studio, I even have 3 paintings going at one time. I get really antsy when I work too long on one. I get like, oh, I gotta get away from this one. Or if something's taking too long and it's not looking like anything, then I want to get to the next one because I want to look at it again a little bit later and see how it's working. I guess it's kind of impatience. See, you know, like I get very impatient. I'm gonna make the street wet too. I decided I'm gonna make the street wet, and so I'm gonna get a little bit of reflections of these people, shadows and reflections. And you can get both. You don't have to just have one. And now I'm gonna go into my smaller detail. So now I'm gonna start doing people. I better take better care of my brushes. All right, so let's get this detail in there, meaning some of the people I can start getting in there. And I put a few extra people than that were in the picture, other than the when they're in the picture.
On your other paintings too.
So I have them drawn out, but I'm gonna just kind of, they're gonna be a little bit faster than just sitting there really tightly and doing them all. It's not gonna be a real tight representation of these people. It's just gonna be a really fast gesture of the people.
They look so good though for just doing like nothing. Don't you think so?
They're Bob's blobs. So yeah, they're nothing people. Bob's blobs. Yeah, Robert Wade taught me how to do Bob's blobs.
I thought you called him David's dad.
Or David's dabs.
Kids.
My students call him David Dabs. I call my teacher Bob's Blobs. And so I'm putting the people that were in there, I put an extra person there because I like to have odd numbers. Because these 2 people right here are even number, and even numbers are not good in art. You always want to go odd numbered. Had to put on some glasses. See- Oh, look at that. Wow. I know. Now watch. Now I can actually see what I'm.
12 minutes.
Oh man, this is a city scene. I thought I was doing a farm scene. Oh, now I know what I'm doing. Now it all comes makes sense.
I don't think if the sun's coming through, it doesn't have.
That's what I want. I would definitely want it to make it look like sun's going through. Yep. Yep. It's supposed to be really bright now. I didn't use like this. See that how that bright that is?
Yeah.
Not that bright because I would have to use orangey red for that to shine through. But it's a regular day, overcast, not overcast, but sunny day. But it's so bright that. But I'm not using it to where it's warm light. It's not a warm light like that. Though I like doing that kind of thing with
I
that.
do too, I like that.
Now I'm gonna do the background people first, and they're gonna be a lot lighter because they gotta sit back. I'll put a little white in my brush, a little color, and put a little dabs back here. There's a garbage can right there. I probably should make that something else. Really don't have to paint a garbage can. Oh well. Maybe this has a little bit of pink. Maybe this is a little bit warmer. Basically, I make. Here's a garbage can. Very pretty garbage can, isn't it?
We're in the middle.
Our planter. Yeah, there we go.
I have to look up the people and practice on those people.
Just put in charismatic people and like go to YouTube and put in charismatic people, whatever, blob people. You get tons of people showing you how to do it that way. Yeah. Oh, I put a backpack on this guy. I was wondering why he had a hump on his back. I'm like, boy, that guy got a big hump. But I said I put a backpack on him because I didn't want I wanted
Because you couldn't erase the whole.
to. I always try to think of my people when I'm putting them in as like if I'm walking down the street, what do I see? You know, start visualizing people, and when you're walking and you're looking, and especially here in like Geneva, what are people carrying? What are people doing? What are they? You know.
Listen, they have a backpack.
So you just go and that's how you think about. You know, you don't want them all the same either, right? So they're wearing different things. So what do people wear when they're walking down the street? Even though I have the picture right in front of me, I didn't want to use certain things because it looks kind of weird. It looks funny. It doesn't look right to me. And so why would you put something in that doesn't look right? You know, you change it and change it up to where make it look right then. Or maybe if they're not wearing a color you like, you know, you can change their clothes. They're not there to say no. I'm not gonna wear that color.
Really good. Come on, I'm gonna die.
There you go, walking the dog. So I have one person over here I put in there with a bike. He had the bike next to me. He's just walking the bike. So just and then sketch it up. A lot of times, if you're waiting for a bus or you're waiting at a doctor's office, get a sketchbook in together and just start drawing things, sketching things. That helps you draw. Helps you learn how to draw. And I have to make them dark so they look silhouetted against the light. You know, and these back here are kind of covered with the light. They're covered all the way around with the light. And it's not almost close to what I see in the photograph, but I know it'll work because of just. And then there's a shadow. See, the shadow's already there. I put that there already. And I can make it darker in some spots if I want later. Now, this is pretty thick. When I did these people, it's got very, very thick.
It looks good. Do you want it that way?
Yeah, no, I wanted it that way. I wanted to get thicker as I go into more detail.
I like how warm that building is.
Let me put another building right here real lightly just to identify another shape back here. It's all about just my values are all set now. Everything is set for value wise. All I'm doing now is details to make it look like the frosting on the cake and I'm putting the happy birthday on the cake. You know, it's not, it's already, the cake's been built. And now I'm putting all the decorations on the cake. Because the values are all there. The values are, except this has to be darker, but I can get to that in a second. Let me put that in right now. This has to be darker, right? It's got to come forward and be in front. And so I got to go in there with a little bit darker. Now, one thing you gotta watch out for when you're using acrylic is that you keep your brushes clean because they will dry and then you'll have a problem with your brushes. I want to make sure we get it clean these. And when you get done, totally rinse them out in the water, clear water. Not like watercolors, I usually leave them all messy because it doesn't matter. Next day, you wash them out, but I gotta stop and think while I'm doing that in acrylic. Then I'll just have ruined a bunch of brushes. All right, what did I say? This was do that and stop. Okay, so that's gonna be really dark, and I'm gonna give it. There's also a light I put in here, which I'll put in front of that. So now I'm gonna take it a little bit thicker now. I'm gonna take pretty much thicker paint. Ooh, I even got some metallic in there. Wow, look at the metallic purple. I don't want metallic purple, so I'm gonna tone that down. That's another thing with these are gouache. You can get metallics, you can get iridescence, you can get fluorescence. You know, it's all kinds of cool
You
brushes.
could use those on water, couldn't you? Is that how that, a lot of those waters sparkle?
You can, I don't know how you use it.
Oh.
You just use it any way you want. It just gives you, I did a couple on the black paper because it sparkles then and stuff. And so people like to use it on black paper.
We don't have sun shines on water sometimes and there's just tons.
Oh, yeah, yeah, you can do that.
The other day, I thought, well, maybe you said that, maybe it was that.
Could be, yeah, look at that. That's fluorescent. Now I wouldn't use it there because why would I use it there? But I can make it, I can take it into that color, make it warm. I love that about acrylic. I can just go over things or whatever. Really don't have to be so perfect with things. Now this is getting thicker again, right? Each time I go, I'm getting thicker and thicker. So I'm looking for perspective. Perspective right there. Here it goes a little bit straighter. It goes like this, right? Know your perspective. Know how you're drawing. I will put a little bit of this color, like maybe this is a window. So what happens if a window, maybe I take a little bit of that blue, maybe reflect a little blue in there, like there's a window. See how I don't have to be perfect with it because I can always cover things up and
That's my problem. I don't know how to paint and not have it perfect. I mean, you know, more realistic,
you don't get it perfect later. You don't have to get it right away.
no, I mean, to me, what you're doing is perfect, but I don't know how to do that. You know, I mean, I sit there for an hour in one little, one by one square. That's the way I use it. And I didn't. This is more fun.
I can get away from it and see it from a distance a little bit. Hold on. That's pretty cool wall.
Which one?
It's a pretty crooked wall right there.
It's pretty good though. Ancient buildings.
Let's straighten that up a little bit more. The architect would hate that. Like, look at what you did at my building. Shut up.
I like the colors that you're putting in.
Too, and they're not colors that I normally, not the purples and stuff you would use, but I like them.
The red and so on.
I love that red.
And you think I'm actually thinking about what color I'm putting in there?
And where?
Anywhere.
You're
What
not.
color are you gonna,
Nope. Nope.
you're not gonna put what in there?
I think about warm and cool, but I'm not thinking about exactly what color to put in what spot.
Oh,
I mean, I'm using the colors that I have down here, and when I start, I kind of use those same colors so that it matches throughout the picture.
it does, but
But-
the people look good in the red, that's where you have most of the red clothes.
But I'm not actually thinking, and that actually this week in my newsletter, I was talking about aha moments. And you're going to get to a point where you're painting and you're not thinking about things like that. You're thinking about, like, you're not thinking about how to mix, you're not thinking about how to put the paint on, you're not learning, you're just painting. So you get to a point where you're just painting and you're not thinking about, okay, how much paint do I use here? How much water do I use? That becomes, hopefully becomes just part of your way of painting. And so you want to get to the point, the aha moment where you're going, aha, I'm just painting now. This is great. This is what I want to do. And then you can think about things like how dark should I make something, or I want to try something new. I want to spatter on this one or something because I really, sorry. So mom's trying to get a hold of me.
Their wages are clean.
Do you decide I'm gonna make it like to the blue dark or to the brown dark or to the gray dark?
Yeah, I kind of think warm is it gonna be a warm dark or a cool dark, basically. And then like this pole right here, I'm just gonna go with black first, and then I'll put a color on top of it, not knowing which way to go yet. And so what I'll do is I'll just put this as a pole, which is also made crooked here now again. So, and then what I do is I'll go down with just a dark color, and then if I feel like, you know what, the one side should be a little bit warmer, so I'll take a warm color, and I'll take red and put it right on the side. You know, so I'm painting as I go along basically and thinking, oh, what could that use? I don't go down here going, know exactly what color I should use. I just go, well, that's gotta be a dark. I mostly go for the value first. I'm going for the value, and then I go for the color afterwards. There's a little post here, and I might as well just make them dark, right? And then I can put color on top of them. And I even do that with watercolor, because on watercolor, once it's wet, then I can apply paint into that. I can just, here it's thick, and I can put a thick color on top of that. Like I can put a really bright red on the side. I can do the same thing with watercolor. And on the tops of things, I'm gonna make things light. So I can take white paint and I can put a little hit of white on top to make it look like the light's hitting the top of it. I'm not even painting because how long are we going?
Even an hour.
Okay, Miriam.
He does.
You know.
We can do is take a break for a second if you want. And let me just. I want to take a break anyways and look at it one more time from a distance. Let me just do this here a little bit, and then we can take a break and.
Go eat some cookies.
I've done some sketching with things that I've done some more stuff. Yes, what is that line? Yeah, what is that line? It's just.
What's
Yeah,
that?
what is it?
That's gonna be part of a street. This is a street that's going through here. This would be a sidewalk. And then like the street is bending right here. And once I get the sidewalk in there and again I'm gonna get the lines in the street and the cobblestone, then it'll make sense. There's kind of a dark line though. And this will be the other curb. This will be the other curb over there. What is that? Trying to think what that is. Oh, that's my person with the bike. Okay. You know, when I'm drawing them up, sometimes I just add stuff on here and there. Now this whole area right here is a little bit darker, and so I'm just put that in there real quick before. So these are gonna be white lights right there, and there's gonna be a white light over here, so I gotta get the darks underneath it first. So this is more of a acrylic oil painting technique, is where you're getting it dark first, and then put the lights on top of it. But that I'm at that point now where I can do that. I got everything blocked in, so now I'm putting in big things or dark things, and it makes sense when you get the detail in there.
It does now.
Dark you put in will get lighter and or it'll get darker and darker, and you get more and more identified what's happening with every little detail. And then I gotta get this in here. Couple windows up here. Now we'll take a real fast break so I can sit down for a second. My back is killing me bending over this thing. That's okay. We're good.
Okay, do you stand when you paint?
Yeah, usually I stand up on a table like this. I have it in front of me like this. But normally I don't paint like this over the side.
We can find
No, this is fine. This is fine. I'll just take a little bit of a break then, and we'll be good. I can look at it to see what I still have to do. It won't be much. I'll be getting some of the details. All right, let's take a little short break.
Want to stop here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. All right, so now let's go in here and get really fine details now, and even details that I are not in the photograph. I'm going to add a few details. Like there's a lamp right here. I just want to put in. Just going to put in a little lamp there. And speaking of like art supply stores, I just went to NAMTA, which is a big expo for all the art dealers who deal with all art products, and they display them to all the art stores. All the art stores go there to see what's new, and it's such a neat thing, and really shows you about the art supply industry and stuff. And that's like I was saying, go to those art supply stores because they're hurting because of like a lot of the places. And if they're all closed up, it'd be kind of not nice to have, you get everything from Michael's, but even Michael's, you don't get the best stuff.
Well, I got a friend of mine, gave me like a certificate to get art stuff there and some art stuff. So some of it was not quite what anybody would use, so I went back and traded it and everything was half price, so I just got a bunch of it. Otherwise, normally I would, my mother and my family are artists, but they'd always get Grumbacher. And that was the only thing, you don't get anything else, and that was like 100 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
There's so many.
Easy, that's what we used in school.
What?
You're saying it was ancient stuff, it's not. Ancient.
Meaning that he's not very ancient.
Mine, of course, I never met you.
So now this is very opaque, right? I'm going with thick. I'm putting on the thick, round.
Weren't you saying that Holbein's going into Michael's?
Michael's, yep. Holbein is going to start going. I think this gouache is going into Michael's.
Oh. But you said not to buy from them, right?
No, definitely to buy from Michael's is okay.
I thought that was. just-
Any store that sells art supplies, give them the business instead of Amazon. I mean, I buy everything on Amazon, but when you're buying some art supplies, try to get in there a little bit. Try to get some of the stuff from the art supply stores because they really.
The private art supply stores.
Yep.
But they do it to the ghost houses.
What's that?
Amazon killed bookstores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the small ones, but actually, like the big ones, like, what was it, Barnes and Noble, which I really like Barnes and Noble, but Barnes and Noble, and what was the other one that closed down? Walton Book?
Borders.
Borders. They kind of killed the small business at first, but then they went out of business.
Some people have Barnes and Noble recently. Yeah, so, and they're there's changing each stores to for some interest, on the other, and people never.
So now I'm putting really fine details in things, trying to make it look a little bit more like what it is.
So this is, yeah. Since 37, and I love them, but I always know if you don't try to find me, like, if you ever get on by those the small business, well. Randall. Oh, yeah. I know, and well, it's, Barnes and Noble doesn't deal with. Or they used to, cause I went down last week to one on Berkeley always, and she said they don't do that anymore, cause I said, okay, I can't get on your site and order from, if you don't have it. Okay, I know that one, the one at the fair. And on Randall. Like the Mayfair one, too. Mayfair's a big branch of all. Sometimes,
As I was told to put in the eaves of things, in the eaves of your arches and stuff, always make them warm. It'll look like the earth is into the top of it. It always gives it a good look, and that's I learned from Shapiro. Irving Shapiro always did that in his like barns and anything in the eave of something. You can make that solid orange, and it really looks cool. Now, I don't want to get rid of a lot of the watercolor look, like the soft edges. So when you're going thick, you have to blend, right? So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll still do the watercolor look like this, where I'm doing a lot of water instead of making it really thick, because I don't like the look of really thick if it's not, if I want to make it smooth. And again, because I'm lazy, I don't like the blend. I wanted to blend itself, and so I always let it blend itself. And that's the watercolor technique that I love, and the reason I totally love watercolor. I used to paint on a train many, many, many years ago when I was taking the train downtown every day. And I like the fact that watercolor because I could do that. You know, really there was no other medium that you could actually sit there on a train and open up your little case and paint away. And that was really the reason I loved watercolor so much because it's so portable. You can do it anywhere and it's very simple. You don't need that many tools, a couple brushes and a piece of paper, and you're going go ahead, you know. It was always considered back in the days, the masters used it as a sketching material. They actually didn't do paintings until like Sargent, they started doing paintings and stuff like that, but it wasn't so much a like, like the paintings they did with the oil paintings, and it was more sketching. But nowadays, look at how far it came. Nowadays, people are using it for hyperrealism, and it's amazing that what they can get out of it, with watercolor. And now it's going back to where now we're using all things together. It's kind of fun using it all together. I just noticed, I'm looking at the color might be a little bit blue in here. See how I can just go over things? I don't have to have it that way if I don't want it. I can go back in, get things darker. I can get things lighter again too. Like if I feel that I need to have something a little bit lighter, I'll go back in with something lighter and thick. Because I'm at the point now where I'm not doing watercolor anymore. Now I'm actually in the acrylic technique side. Another little person in there. There was a biker right here who had a bike, messenger guy. And this is the point where if I'm in my studio, I'd sit there and I spend some time, I get my cup of coffee, sit it over there, and now I'm a little bit more patient and I'm going to do one little parts here and there, sit back a lot, look at it, see what you have to still do. And then I'll even have two other paintings next to me because I'll get tired of that one. I think, I'm going to look at that one later. And so I just go back and forth all around doing a little bit of on each one until I feel it's finally done. See all these little details coming in now. All those little things, all the little darks, all the little, and that's not thick enough. And it's transparent right now because I put it on so thin. So to make that really thick, what I got to do is I got to use my paint thick. I use pure white and I'll just go in there and I'll hit it with a pure, thick white to the point where it is sticking out. It's like oil painting. And I kind of like that look where you have little specks of really thick paint on there. In my watercolors, even. I like putting them in my watercolor now. Top of people and the side of people where the light's going to hit. So I put in little hints of light, like it's here, a little light coming through here. Now, normally wouldn't do this with watercolor. We can go back in there and put the little flecks in there. You're not supposed to, but then that's opaque, right? Oh, paper towel. Forgot to get some. See, I'll go with white paint and I'll go back in here, tag my side of remember I said I'm going to make it look a little more like a curb. Hit the side of these things, the side of the sign. Oh, thanks. There's two lights right up here. There's one, and two, and I'll put the side on. These are all things that make it look realistic. And you get to a certain point, you got to make it look like the object, what's actually happening there. Like you can't make it so not good where you're seeing everything about it. I mean, it is kind of very what was the word I'm looking for? Um, representational art. So you're representing things that it doesn't have to look photographic, but it is nice to have those things in there, knowing it'll make it look more realistic. It doesn't have to be done perfectly, but just to have those little things in there. It could be like a little chain right on there. Things like that. I put this in, it wasn't really there, but there's probably a chain right there. You never know. It's like, but it's real, makes it more realistic. In the street, there's usually a little grate in there. And then I'm gonna put in cobblestone. And so what I'm gonna do is first put in the lines. Oopsie. So first what I'm gonna do is I'm put in the lines, a really light line. I would sometimes mostly put them in with pencil first to kind of see. And I put some of the lines that are going across. These are the grout lines of the bricks that are going to be in the pavers. Some of the light because it's still in shadow, right? You're going to go across. And I'm going to follow the perspective. I have to make sure I follow the perspective of the lines, juxtaposition each brick. And this is kind of very detailed, but it's going to give this. I'm not doing every single one. I'm just getting an impression again of those bricks. This is maybe more of a sidewalk, so I can just put the cracks that break your mama's back here. See that? On sidewalks, it's really easy to make a sidewalk like a sidewalk. You just put in between each sidewalk out there, they always put a little lines, so that's easy. That's the easy part. And it would be in the light part and the dark part because it's shadowed. And then I'm gonna put reflections of this building. This is gonna be like a reflection into, if I want to make it look wet, the street wet, or if I want to make the street look like, a lot of times a street may not be wet, but because it's like cement, and cement is what, sand? Sand, it's kind of like glass. If it gets worn down, the cement, it gets shiny. So it may not be wet, the street, but it is shiny because of how much shininess it is. Sidewalks get shiny after a while when you walk on them. So I always like to reflect downwards into the street plus a shadow. You can have both. You can have a shadow and a reflection. They're two different things, but you can get them like this could be a reflection in the street, but there's also shadow. Because the street means that it's wet, and the shadow means it's the shadow of the sun. And you have to realize they're two different things. They're not the same thing. So a lot of times I'll be teaching and they'll be putting in a shadow, and I'm saying no, we're putting in reflections. They're not a shadow; it's a reflection. And like these doors could be reflected into the street here too. They're farther away, but they can make the street look wet. You can just put them in there in the street, right? And now I have the little lines in there, but now I can fill in some of these bricks with dark. And I like to use my 1/4 inch brush because it's the size of these bricks. And just go in there and start filling some of them in. You notice how I just used a dirty color on my palette? Because I know it's going to be one of the colors I use elsewhere. So why not just use your dirty palette to make some colors? Here you can do it here a little bit. You don't have to put them all in. You can just even dab it like this in some places. It'll represent the street of cobblestone. And where do you think my center of interest is? Right here. All the people, this whole area is center of interest. So that's where I want you to look first. And hopefully that's where you look first. And then that's where you get the most detail, most color. Maybe I'll put a little, oh, she's got a striped dress on. Nah, that's ugly.
It's got a long waist.
Yeah. Gotta be fashion conscious.
Do not smoke sign up there. What is that?
Yeah, that's the wrong way. You don't go that way.
Oh, no, and no.
No entry, no entry that way. It didn't even have a cross through it, but usually that's probably a speeding or a certain speed sign. It doesn't have anything in there, but I remember they have a lot of circles with crosses through it, so I'm thinking that's a better one. Let me put a little bit more on this side, and I think we're almost done. Get a little bit dark in here to get the edges. People ask me sometimes, is this how you paint in your studio? No, not really. When I'm in my studio, for one, I have music playing. I have it blasting actually. And I get into it sometimes because I'm going with the music and you're tapping with your thing and you're looking at it, and so it's a little bit different. And also, like I said, and then I'm not teaching either. I'm just having fun. I'm trying to make it look like something that I've never painted before, you know.
And me, no.
And so here, this is to be teaching. This I do because I want to teach you something. So I look for things. What can I teach you in this? I'd probably be a little bit more careful with certain brushstrokes that I'm doing too. I'm a little bit more detailed with my in where I'm working it to like maybe for AWS. Like my AWS one that I did, I work slower. I'm not worried about time. I'm just sitting there and want to make it look the best it can be. Now these, to make them look brighter, I got to make them look darker because they're too bright. And so what I do is I'm going to make them darker and then put lighter on top of that. Because nothing looks light until you have a dark around it or near it. So you gotta make it darker and then put your little thick stuff on there. Now I'm just playing here. Well, let's put some light bricks in here too. Instead of the dark ones, then you're gonna be also shiny ones, a little bit lighter. Again, if you can see, I'm working thick now. I'm covering things up like with white paint here. I can put in little light bricks and stuff. Smudge it if I want. It's really fun working all the mediums together. I really enjoy using all the mediums now. I don't like limiting myself to just doing watercolor by itself. And especially when I'm going to go out there and I'm going to start doing the plein air paintings, the plein air societies that have the plein air events. Because you're like in a competition, you're out there with oil painters, and I'm doing watercolor. You're never going to win anything because those oil painters, they just have a more richer look. And so I'm thinking, well, I got to make it look like that because that was like I was going against oil painters, so I wanted to look like it doesn't matter if it's an oil painting or a watercolor. So that's a watercolor, but it doesn't look like a watercolor. It looks more like an oil maybe, but not really thick yet. But
Heavier than a regular one.
yeah, it is a little bit. It's hard to tell when people come up with it and like, well, what is that? Is that watercolor? But does it matter? It really doesn't matter to me.
Studying people's artwork, it matters to me only because I don't know how they got that. Got there,
Yeah.
just like this, I would never have known unless I listened to you, how you did this. Because you kind of started out like abstract with your colors and your brushes and all this. And then you kind of narrowed it down to more of a focal point,
Uh-huh.
that was more realistic.
So I'm just putting little drops in there now to get the highlights of things that are lit up on this side. Now, don't those look a little bit brighter now, even when I put the blue in there? And I put a little pure white. And I'm gonna do that back here to make this look really vibrant back here, like you're hitting all the little spots back here to, because it's really bright back there. So the whiter you can get it back there, the better. A little flicking of white. And that's the fun thing about oils is the thickness of that. Now I can go more and more, and I can make things darker, and then really take like really big gobs of it and put it on there. But I don't need to. Anything